It's
Towns.
Townsend. So
Just Towns.
Townsend.
Towns. No Towns.
Towns.
Just Towns.
I don't know where I'm adding these.
That's all right. It's a long day.
And so, one of the points that you made that stuck out to me was your message to the black church. Could you re-echo that into my blog?
Sure. One of the things that concerns me today is the way in which the black church is often more concerned about prosperity rather than the prophetic. And so what I was trying to make a point about is we need to move away from that because prosperity is really about the individual. Maybe the individual's family, maybe a few other people around them, but what the prophetic is about all of us and all of us working together. Working together for justice and working together for better homes and housing. I mean, the whole social safety net that I think that's what the Bible's about. And so when we are only worried about ourselves and accumulate, we get away from, I think, what the strongest biblical message there is, which is to be there for the least of these.
And could you speak a bit about the because a lot of things I've been hearing, a lot of the panel speakers was a disconnect, not a division, but more of a disconnect, not just between each other within the community, but to other communities. What suggestions would you give to the black church to connect with the youth and the people who feel like they don't see the church because people don't approach them because maybe there's a fear element, but there's definitely a disconnect. So maybe you could even explain where the disconnect comes from and how to bridge that.
I think the biggest problem with the kind of disconnect.
Oh, and can you start all over and just project because they're getting a little hypey over here.
I think the biggest problem with the disconnect that you're asking about is that we don't listen. We're so busy talking, we're so busy telling people what to do that we don't listen to them. And I think this is particularly true with young adults, youth, and that whole age group, that there's a sense in which we don't really value the youth in our midst. And instead, we think we have to tell them everything without listening to what they've got to say. Now, most of us know that there's going to be some mess said, as well as some profound things said. But unless we wait a minute and stop talking and start listening, we'll never know. We'll never hear the kind of innovative ideas that young people today are coming up with, just in terms of how to be with each other. Young people today are much more tolerant than folks in my generation about a whole host of ways we are as people these days. And if we could listen to them and learn from them, then maybe we could get some things going and that disconnect would disappear. Or at least it would lessen to the degree that it's not such a difficult thing to do to really foster conversations back and forth between different age groups, different racial ethnic groups, different folks along the class structure, gender, intersex, you name it, that these are things that we tend to treat as barriers to each other as opposed to ways in which we're just a part of creation, just one other representation of creation. And that disconnect often speaks more to the sins in our midst than, in fact, to the grace and salvation in our midst. And that, for me, is the message that the church needs to be engaged in, is getting closer and closer to what it means to lead people to salvation and justice and love and peace and hope, and not telling them how evil or bad they are. That's not going to be helpful. It's not ever been helpful, and it's even more so today.
Thank you so much for your time.